My name is Garth Minott. I'm an Anglican priest and I lecture at the United Theological College of the West Indies, and I'm also Anglican chaplain at the University of the West Indies. Today, in my reflection, I was able to focus on a story that Jesus told in a context of a conversation between a lawyer and himself. And the question the lawyer asked was, what should I do to inherit eternal life? Which is, put another way, what should I do to live a good quality life? So he says, well, who is my neighbor? Because neighbor was one of the conditions of living a good life under the law. So he then goes on to say, well, who is my neighbor? And so Jesus, being the good teacher he was, told this story of what we now know as or describe as the Good Samaritan, which is three people going down a road. Two people, and all three saw someone injured and close to death along the roadside, and two very religious and astute people passed by. And then a Samaritan, that's usually despised in the context by the religious community, stopped by and took care of the wounded gentleman, took him to a health center, and paid in advance for care to be taken of him. And it's interesting that the story didn't say that the Good Samaritan asked him his sexual orientation. He didn't ask him for his political allegiance. He didn't ask him for his status, where he lived. He didn't ask him about his religious persuasion. He didn't ask him about what kinds of and quality of relationships he has, how many sins he has committed, if he has a criminal record, etc. Those were not important at that point in time. What was important is a basic principle of human right, which is securing the health and well-being of the person at that particular point in time. And I'd like to suggest that in our relationships with people, what we must see first is the human being and the capacity of this particular human being to love, to care, to be at peace with self and with others. And our responsibility is to create an environment within which people can flourish in this way, that is to live at peace, live in love, etc. And in anywhere we see where that environment does not exist, then it is our responsibility to work to create that environment. In the context of the Jamaican society, it is no secret that our level of tolerance is much to be desired when it comes to treating people that are different generally, but treating people with different sexual orientation in particular. And that has very little to do with how one may feel about another person's sexual orientation. Your feelings will vary, and I mean, every person is entitled to their feelings. But in terms of a fundamental principle of Christian principle, but also a fundamental principle of human right, every person is entitled to their sexual orientation, and it is not the remit of any person to try to convert or convince anyone about what their sexual orientation must be, should be, or ought to be. True, the church has its own positions and principles in terms of what sexual practices and other practices we approve or do not approve. But those are Christian principles, Christian morals, etc. And that's why we preach. We have sermons. You persuade people, but that's what persuasion is. The fact that you persuade someone does mean they agree with your point of view or your propaganda, as it may be. And that's the spirit of democracy, that we exist in an environment where you can put your ideas, your thoughts, your perspective out there, and people may or may not choose to accept it. The fact that someone does not agree with your perspective doesn't mean that you should become violent and, intolerant and so on. So I leave the message of the Good Samaritan, taking care of a human being without prejudice, or put another way, taking care of a human being unconditionally. And therefore the love of neighbor is the message that I want to leave to all of us, Christian, non-Christian, atheists, whatever it is. Put the human being first, and as we say in Jamaica, respect the